All right, in this video, we are going to do number 15 from the study guide. I asked you to graph both functions, or all three functions, I guess, in radians, labeling the period. We usually use a T for the period, and the amplitude, which we usually use the letter A for. So these two, the first two, are just kind of the base starting functions that we learned in this unit. We did the sine one with spaghetti, and then we kind of made some ideas about the cosine one to draw the same type of graph. So remember, they go up and down 1 unit. Sine starts at 0, and then it goes up to 1, back down to 0, down to -1, 0, 1, 0, -1, and it continues like this. So what I typically like to do is sketch in those little intersections at the crisscrosses, and then label the axis appropriately. So for example, I asked you to do it in radians. You should know that 360 degrees is a full rotation in degrees, and that and that 2 pi would be the radian version. So since I'm asking you to do this in radians, we look at this graph, and it goes up, down, and then it stops there, and then it keeps going and repeats itself. So this is that full first rotation. So I'm going to label that as 2 pi. I've already got this labeled as 1, and I'll label that as -1. What you want to do then is indicate that this right here is the period. And we can use the letter T, and it's equal to 2 pi. And we're done with that one. Sine or cosine is really similar. I'll draw my axes in like this, except for it starts at 1, and then it goes down, and then down to -1, to 0, to 1, to 0, -1, 0, and then I can just sketch that little curve in like this, and it has the same period as cosine, or as sine does. And notice that right there is that rotation through the period. Starts up, goes down, and then boom, it gets back to that spot. So again, that's the full rotation around the unit circle. My pen would write, I get, come on, 2 pi right there. And then I'm going to label my height as 1, my other height as -1. And then that's good for that graph. You should label maybe like this. I asked you to label come on, T equals 2 pi, and then here I'll label the amplitude. Amplitude is 1. Amplitude is 1, and we've talked about that a lot. Amplitude represents how high up it goes from the midline, and then how far down it also goes, right? So I can label the amplitude like that. Come down here, y equals 2 sine x. So this is gonna this changes the amplitude. This number here is always the amplitude. So I'm gonna label that as A for amplitude. Now I'm gonna go and draw in my axes, and I'm gonna put dots at the spots, but I'm gonna go up to 2 there, down to -2, 0, up to 1, up to 2, 0, down, 0. Sketch it in like this. Label that as 2 pi. Label the period as 2 pi, T equals 2 pi. And label the amplitude, A equals 2. And we're done with those. Hopefully that makes sense and that is familiar, or you recognize that from before. We labeled the period, we labeled the amplitude, we're good to go.